Arab discrimination, and particularly of anti-Semitism in Canada. This is unacceptable and needs to end. No protest that advocates violence or hate is acceptable in this country. Alors que de plus en plus de membres de famille de Canadiens de résidents permanents peuvent rejoindre leur famille ici au Canada en toute sécurité, nous devons également assurer la sécurité des uns et des autres au sein de notre communauté. Thank you. Je vous remercie. Now take the questions.
Thank you, Minister. We'll begin in the room with questions. For colleagues online, please use the raise hand function on Zoom if you do have a question. It will be one question, one follow-up, and as mentioned, we'll start with the room before we move online. I believe the Minister has a good chunk of time, so hopefully we'll be able to get through everyone. And we will begin with Kevin Gallagher, CTV.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking our questions. Can we be specific now on how long these, for the family members that are extended, just be specific on who this encompasses and how long that temporary visa would last? This is, of course, providing that they get through the Rafah crossing.
Yeah, and I think, Kevin, it is important to highlight how difficult it is to get through the Rafah gate at this time or any other exit from Gaza. These are situations that are not under control. We have had not unsubstantial difficulty getting Canadians and permanent residents out. It has required advocacy from our teams and those of Global Affairs Canada. Those family members, as I mentioned, include spouses, common law partners, children regardless of age, grandchildren, siblings, parents of grandparents of a Canadian citizen or permanent residents, and their immediate family members. We've had limited ability to get Canadians and permanent residents out, but we have limited it to closer family unit definitions. And this expands the definition and allows us a greater set of people that may not be permanent residents or Canadians, but for all intents and purposes represent the family of people that are close to Canadians. The time period for staying on a temporary basis will be 3 years, and consistent with other policies that we've put into place.
Follow up, I just have a question from my colleagues at CTV Toronto. An Ontario Superior Court has ruled it's unconstitutional for Canada to deny citizenship to children born abroad because a parent was born overseas. And a lawyer for the families involved says the humane thing for the government to do now is not appeal. So the question is, does the government plan to appeal this decision or let it stand and let the families get on with their lives and citizenship for their children?
You know, I'm going to have to review the case. I only found out about it yesterday. Was following it. We'll have to look at the decision. Very sympathetic to the idea that someone who is cut off in that fashion, there's a level of unfairness, I think, to it. It was a measure that was put into place by a prior government, and our government has objected to it. And we do have legislation going through Parliament that is intended to address and redress the situation. So whether we appeal it will depend on the ruling itself and the particular points on which it was decided. But I can be quite clear in saying that I am very sympathetic to the reality of the people that had to go to court to get that judgment. But it'll be a decision that we'll have to let you know a little more about later.
Chris Rance, CBC.
Hi, Minister. Good to see you. You've said that Canada wants to put as many people on the list to get folks out of Gaza as it wants, but ultimately it's up to Israel to actually allow these people to leave. What assurances do you have from the Israelis that more Canadians like this, they will actually be able to leave, and will you have to run each one through the name and so on? If you would, please.
There is an extensive vetting system that is done on the ground. And it depends on the Israelis have their say. They will screen people and decide whether they leave or don't leave. We don't have any assurances as of yet, and it'll be a discussion that we will have to have. We rely on the good faith of the parties on the ground, and we have had some good success in getting people out that we have put on our list. But their list and our list are sometimes different, and it requires discussions on the ground with our teams. So no particular assurances. We are going to make sure that we have a cohesive list of people and motivations for them to come out based on this family definition that's now expanded. And whether they do or don't get out will not be dependent on Canada, but we'll put the effort in.
And my supplementary, Palestinians fleeing their homes and being forced abroad is a sensitive issue in the region, in the history of the region. Is that why there's an emphasis today on temporary work and study permits versus permanent resettlement, in contrast with the Syrians and the Ukrainians, for instance?
I think the logic at the end of the day is to get people out and to make sure they're safe. Inevitably, it'll be a question of choice. We just want to get them together and back with their families as quickly as we can. And that's the objective of today. I do understand the geopolitical considerations and the historical reality of the people living in Gaza. But at this time, that I think played very little in the final consideration, which is put together a policy that is temporary in nature, just to keep people and to get people safe for a period of 3 years.
Louis Blouin.
Bonjour, Monsieur le ministre. Il y a peut-être des gens qui écoutent ça qui se disent à quoi ça sert d'annoncer ces mesures-là aujourd'hui si le passage de Rafah est bloqué, si on n'a pas de garantie de pouvoir sortir les gens. Est-ce que vous en avez obtenu des garanties? Est-ce que vous avez espoir qu'un jour ça débloque? Est-ce que ça vaut la peine d'annoncer ça si on n'a pas de garantie?
Oui, ça vaut la peine, Louis. Déjà, on avait eu un certain succès à faire sortir des gens qui n'étaient pas dans notre définition classique de gens qui étaient Canadiens résidents permanents ou la famille nucléaire pour laquelle on militait la sortie de Rafah. Mais là, de faire ça de façon conséquente et cohérente avec nos définitions et notre politique qu'on vient de rédiger, on n'a pas les garanties. Je pense qu'il faut démontrer l'effort. Il y a beaucoup de familles au Canada qui attendent leurs proches. Il y a des gens qui sont peut-être restés à cause du fait que ces gens-là faisaient partie de leur famille, mais qui ne faisaient pas partie de la définition. Donc, il y a peut-être espoir d'avoir plus de personnes et gain de cause en conséquence. Je n'ai pas les garanties de l'État d'Israël ou de Hamas ou de l'Égypte que ces gens puissent sortir, mais on va déployer les efforts nécessaires pour le faire. Oui, je pense que ça vaut la peine. Les gens le réclamaient depuis fort longtemps, puis je pense que c'est la bonne chose à faire, puis moi, je pense qu'il faut essayer.
Est-ce que vous avez une estimation du nombre de personnes qui pourraient bénéficier de ce que vous annoncez aujourd'hui?
On a un sens, ça pourrait être plusieurs centaines, mais pas un estimé précis pour l'instant, mais on pense dans les centaines.
Murray Wolf.
Yeah, could I just ask the same question in English, which is, do you have an estimate of the numbers we're talking about?
So we're thinking, Mary, in the hundreds. It isn't clear. We don't have a precise number of people, given that the people that are being covered are ones that we wouldn't have an immediate count of. They're not Canadians or permanent residents. But if you extrapolate from the number of people that we have brought out and look at perhaps what their family relations are, it looks like it could be in the hundreds, but we don't have a clear, precise sense at this time.
A practical question such as, security vetting, would that take place in Egypt? How would that work? And the other question is about unaccompanied minors. Have you thought about what would happen there? I mean, there's a potential danger of human trafficking. And can I just clarify, the government isn't offering to pay for their airfare. They're simply saying, we're going to give you the visa. Is that correct?
Yeah, there could be circumstances where we will ask people to sponsor, and there could be circumstances, exigent circumstances, where the government of Canada could loan the money, as we do in similar cases. We have, in one particular instance, asked a family to come over and recover unaccompanied minors who had lost their family in Egypt. And so getting minors out is extremely difficult, particularly if they have lost, if they're unaccompanied or if they've lost their parents. And the concern of human trafficking is top of mind. In terms of the security, really two stages. The first stage is the one that is done by the authorities on the ground at Rafah Gate that have their own security screening vetting procedure. And we will be performing biometrics as well in Cairo. So really a two-staged approach before anyone is allowed to come to Canada.
Mackenzie.
Hi, Minister. Just to switch things up to talk about housing, there's a new report out from the Bank of Canada that says that roughly on a quarterly basis, the Canadian population growth that we've seen so far, there needs to be roughly 250,000 new housing starts every month to keep up with the number of people who are coming to Canada. That's on top of housing issues that we already have. Do you think it's fair for the Canadian government to allow new students, temporary foreign workers to come to Canada when it's clear that there is such a housing issue in this country right now?
Yeah, and with some, these two issues have been increasingly tied together, and there is obviously a correlation we need to look at. Clearly, the number of people that are here temporarily in this country has skyrocketed over the last few years, and we've seen that growth in the last quarter. I think we have to clearly understand what that means, whether it's students, whether it's Ukrainians under the QIT program, whether it's agricultural workers. I think each category does bear some examination. Some people are more capable of getting housing, and some people are already housed. It's clear that that does put pressure on the system, and particularly our housing needs. I've signaled over the last few weeks that two things. One, that we need to get the challenge of international students and the volumes coming in under control, particularly in an area where they are here on a fraudulent basis or on an abusive basis. I think people can expect further steps in the new year to curb that. I think we need to look at the postgraduate work permits that fuel people being here on a temporary basis as well. That is typically a multi-year proposition. So whether those people ultimately leave or not, these are all things that we need to get to, frankly, rein in and get under control. That's going to require some really difficult discussions with provinces over the course of the next couple months. I think the ultimate volume is too much, and we need to rein it in, but it needs to be done in the right way. And that's, I think, the challenge that we'll have over the next few months as we engage with provinces, get them to sort out really what they are doing, particularly in some areas with international students, but in the right way. As I've said, turning off the tap from the federal government is a pretty rough instrument. And if provinces can't get their houses in order, we're prepared to do it, but it's going to require some conversations first, just out of the ability to use our own particular areas of jurisdictions effectively. But clearly, the increase in temporary work permits and the sheer volume of people is something that we need to rein in the new year.
So Canadians should expect, and folks who could be thinking and hearing your comments about potentially coming to Canada should expect that there'll be fewer permits issued both for temporary foreign workers and for international students. Just looking for some clarity on your comment there.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, you're sort of mixing two categories that are related. International students get postgraduate work permits, and so one feeds into the other. Both represent increased volume that we've seen jump astronomically in the last few years, even when you net out the period during COVID. So it's something that has created some unanticipated effects, and it's something that we need to rein in. I'm prepared to do it. The government's prepared to do it, but it's got to come with some serious conversations with the affected jurisdictions to make sure that they're doing their jobs as well. So I'm not trying to target individuals. I'm trying to target the effect of a system that's just run a bit rampant for too long and is causing an impact that is not unappreciable.
We are going to move online. Again, I'll ask my online colleagues if you have a question to please use the raise hand function. We're going to begin with Emily Bergeron. Emily? Okay, we cannot seem to hear Emily. So I'm going to go to Laura Osmond, the Canadian Press.
Good afternoon, Minister. Right.
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Fantastic. Minister, people are going to have a lot of questions on how exactly this works. I'm wondering, can you just walk us through what the process is going to be for families, what kind of documents they need, given the extreme difficulties in Gaza right now? What kind of process there's going to be in terms of when they get out of Gaza? Is that when they do biometrics and all that sort of thing? And what happens if they do that process and then are not admitted to Canada? What happens to them then?
Look, legitimate questions, Laura. You've walked through a whole waterfall of scenarios where things could potentially go wrong. Whether this is a good or bad thing, Gazans tend to have be some heavily documented individuals, just because of the reality they've been living in for sometimes their entire existence. We will require documentation in order to get to Canada. As I explained to Mary, there will be a process just to get people out of Gaza, which will be, knowing from experience, very intensive from a security perspective, as well as the biometrics that will need to be performed in Cairo. We want to get this program and are getting this program up and running as quickly as possible. As we have done in prior programs, we will have a portal that is opened and a communications plan with families to make sure that they are properly accompanied in being able to sponsor someone or a family member. There will be obviously a process of verification in making sure people do get out. I think that security is paramount. Some of it is not under our control, but we will make sure that that we are also being flexible when it comes to exigent circumstances. And when we look at the risk analysis that we apply to getting people out, this is something that I think we have to take quite seriously. I'm not going to examine the scenarios and the potential for things to go wrong. We are working in real time to make sure that it works for people that want to get their extended family out as quickly as they can.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm, I thought I heard you say that the minor dependents of extended family members also qualify, for example, nieces and nephews of Canadians. Is that right?
Siblings and their direct family members.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So you're about to get a lot of phone calls from very desperate families right before the holidays. Is the government prepared to answer those phone calls over the holidays, given that things are slowing down? What's the staffing situation going to be like?
The holiday plans of the government of Canada should not be ones that people are as much as they work hard, ones that people that are facing war should be worrying about. We're doing our utmost to ramp this up as quickly as possible, and there will be availability to reach people over the holidays. You will get more details from my team on what that looks like exactly over the next couple hours or a couple days, Laura.
Thanks, Minister.
Thank you.
We'll try to go again to Emily Bergeron. Emily?
Oui, bonjour. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Oui, super. Monsieur Miller, on peut penser par exemple au programme spécial qui avait été mis en place concernant les Ukrainiens, l'autorisation d'urgence Ukraine-Canada. Vous m'excuserez, je ne sais pas le nom complet exact du programme. C'était aussi pour 3 ans. Par contre, chaque conflit est différent. Dans le contexte-ci, quelles leçons ont été tirées quelles leçons ont pu être tirées de ce qui s'est passé en Ukraine et des programmes d'immigration spéciaux qui avaient été développés à l'instant, et en quoi ça a pu servir un peu à votre feuille de route à l'heure actuelle?
Ben, je pense que ces deux programmes, oui, et je commencerai en disant que le programme spécial de l'Ukraine en est un qui était vraiment exceptionnel, évidemment, vu le volume. Il y a plusieurs centaines de mille de personnes qui sont maintenant au Canada grâce à ce programme. Oui, on regarde j'hésite à tirer des conclusions, même des comparaisons, parce que évidemment, chaque conflit est unique. Il y a des éléments qui sont similaires dans le programme, mais il y a des éléments qui, de façon fonctionnelle, ne sont pas les mêmes. Ici, on parle de sponsorship, donc c'est-à-dire des gens qui ont de la famille ici, qui vont pouvoir parrainer leur famille. On parle de famille. On ne parle pas d'un groupe étendu de gens qui n'ont aucune connexion avec le Canada. Dans le cas de l'Ukraine, oui, il y avait des familles, il y avait une diaspora, mais il y a bon nombre de gens qui n'ont aucune connexion avec le Canada, outre le fait qu'ils sont ici maintenant. Donc, oui, des différences. J'hésite à comparer de façon ligne pour ligne dans chaque politique parce qu'elles sont uniques. Mais c'est clair que chaque fois qu'on révise, même chaque fois qu'on rédige une politique, on regarde ce qui marche, on regarde ce qui ne marche pas, on regarde la réalité sur le terrain. Dans le cas de l'Ukraine, il y avait un gouvernement fonctionnel qui n'était pas une entité terroriste. Dans ce cas-ci, on a le Hamas qui est une organisation terroriste à Gaza. Donc, la réalité est toute différente quant à la capacité d'évacuer ces gens-là. Évidemment, l'étendue et la portée du programme qui est, dans ce cas-ci, plus limitée.
Merci beaucoup. Et pour ce qui est de après le 3 ans de résidence temporaire, est-ce que ça passera par des canaux de programmes préexistants d'immigration? Donc, une fois que ces gens-là auront pu gagner le Canada, auront écoulé leur résidence de 3 ans, quel chemin s'offrirait à eux s'ils désirent rester plus longtemps?
Là, la priorité, c'est qu'ils soient sains et saufs ici au Canada. Dans 3 ans, je ne sais pas ce que sera ou ce qui adviendra de la bande de Gaza. Espérons qu'il y aura la paix. Et dans ce cas-là, le choix de pouvoir retourner. Évidemment, on réévaluera au cas pour cas. Sachez qu'on fait face au même dilemme en ce qui a trait à l'Ukraine, parce que le 3 ans vient à échéance dans une couple de mois. Je ne compte pas retourner qui que ce soit dans une zone de guerre.
Merci.
We're going to come back to the room because we have a few more minutes. Louis Blouin.
Monsieur Miller, hier, dans son entrevue de fin d'année, le premier ministre a parlé des demandeurs d'asile et a dit qu'il y avait des discussions en cours avec le Mexique. Ma question, est-ce qu'on est en train de songer à réinstaurer les visas pour les gens du Mexique? Est-ce que ça fait partie des considérations en cours? Sinon, de quoi parle-t-on avec le gouvernement mexicain?
C'était pas uniquement l'entrevue de fin d'année. Il en avait parlé avec son homologue au Mexique. C'est clair que quand on a levé l'exigence d'avoir des visas pour rentrer au Canada, le Mexique nous avait fait plusieurs représentations qui ne se sont pas réalisées. On voit notamment avec les gens qui viennent du Mexique, mis à part les flux économiques qui sont très importants, je ne veux pas les minimiser, qu'il y a une forte demande d'asile notamment. Et le taux de succès à date diffère de celui des autres demandeurs d'asile. Les gens qui viennent ici demandent de l'asile, généralement, ça frise le 50+% après que le tribunal ait pris sa décision. Dans le cas du Mexique, c'est à peu près 30%. Des gens qui n'ont pas le droit d'être ici, qui n'avaient aucune intention de repartir au Mexique. Et puis, ça crée un problème de volume. Ce n'est pas tout le monde qui a droit de venir au Canada. Alors, on regarde nos options. Je n'ai rien à vous annoncer publiquement pour l'instant. Mais je pense que ça va prendre un tour de vis à un moment donné si ça continue.
Est-ce que l'option de réimposer des visas est sur la table?
Il y a beaucoup d'options sur la table, mais j'hésite d'en parler publiquement pour l'instant. C'est clair qu'il va falloir faire quelque chose à un moment donné.
I believe that brings us to the end of today's press conference. Thank you, Minister, for your time. And I wish everybody a safe and happy holiday season. Au revoir.
Thank you.